The female athletes that have been speaking out against men in female sports.
There's these national governing bodies, NGBs, things like USA Fencing, USA Swimming, USA Volleyball, that do a lot of the sports governance here in the United States and have been one of the number one organizations at fault for the lack of protections for women in sports. And Congress actually certifies these NGBs through something called the Ted Stevens Act. And so I'm grateful that they are finally adding some accountability here and asking questions to these NGBs.
CNN sat down with a vicious gang member to ask if his feelings were hurt when President Trump designated his gang as a foreign terrorist organization. Steve Jordahl has more.
Democrats and their media outlets keep hitching their wagon to the wrong star after fawning for weeks over so-called Maryland man Kilmar Albrego Garcia, who turned out to be credibly accused of being a gang member, beating his wife, and helping traffic people. CNN's Isabel Young scored an interview with a Sinaloa cartel member to find out how he was feeling about being designated a terrorist.
I mean, according to the Trump administration, you are a terrorist. I mean, the cartels have been labeled a foreign terrorist organization. What do you make of that?
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told Fox's Sean Hannity the administration thinks it's a puff piece.
It was a softball interview giving a platform to a notorious drug cartel that has killed American citizens. I thought it was quite despicable.
Nick Kangatis of Media Research Center TV says the mainstream media has reflexively taken the opposite side of almost every issue Donald Trump has opined on.
It's pretty on brand for CNN to give a platform to a terrorist, wondering how his fentanyl business that kills, 80 to 100,000 Americans every year is affected. But they give little to no time to talk to families of people killed by illegals, particularly gang or cartel members.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
The S&P 500 index rose 0.4% in morning trading today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 242 points, and the NASDAQ Composite rose 0.3%. The Fed announces its latest decision on interest rates later today. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Watching a spouse struggle through a health crisis can be hard, but what do you do when that struggle worsens and thoughts of losing someone begin to creep in? This weekend on The Stand Radio, Dr. Ray Rooney shares his story.
What I ended up doing, and I know I did this often, was just say, God, just be with us. Yeah, I know you're going to be with her. Be with me and our grown children, because this is going to be hard.
The Stand Radio, Saturdays at 4 and Sundays at 8 p.m. Central on AFR.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Wednesday, May the 7th, 2025. Thanks for listening to AFR. Joining me in studio today on this here show is Ed Battagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
And Christopher Woodward.
Hello.
That's it, people. Just
That's
three. It's just three of us.
I think we can get the job done, Tim.
A third.
Yep.
We can do this as a team.
I think we can get the job done.
Okay.
We will deliver the news like the Pony Express.
That's what I'm talking
of
about.
Your.
Like the Pony Express of your?
Yes. Of your. You haven't heard that word in a long time.
I haven't heard that word.
Y-O-R-E.
That's up there with Stowe. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Up there with Stowe, yeah, okay.
Stowe and your. I have to find a way to work in your sometime.
Yeah, days of yore.
Kind of like yonder.
Mm-hmm. Yes, another word that should be brought back.
Yonder.
These are
great American words.
Foundational words for our language.
I had a journalism professor that told me she did not like the phrase old adage because it was redundant. An adage is a saying that's said over and over again. It's the only person I've ever heard tell me that. But
those English teachers and English professors, they get pretty surly.
Yeah.
So that's another word, surly.
I used to say repetitively redundant. Until I figure out exactly what I was doing.
Well, irregardless.
Yeah, I was going there next. Okay.
Irregardless, we should always try to use.
What is
words
that? There's an
properly.
expression people use too. They say, I couldn't care less.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. I could care less is what people say, and they say it wrong because
Wrongly.
people go, well, you do care if you could care less.
Right.
They say it wrongly.
I could. People will say I could care less, in which they mean they couldn't care less, but they say I could care less, and you want to say, well, how much less can you care?
Yes.
Would you share that with us?
And when you say you couldn't care less,
Right.
that means you actually care, right?
Right, because you're talking about it.
Right. Right.
So anyway, all right. Thanks for joining us on the program today. Fred was filling in for Jenna this morning, so
He did a great job.
He's resting his golden voice, sipping on
The golden voice.
honey and tea and things to make your.
He's got a case of Clearly Canadian in his office.
How's
Clearly
that?
Canadian. What is that, whiskey?
It's
It's a bubbly water.
Bubbly water.
Clearly Canadian. That's
It's still around.
the real thing.
It was a big thing in the 90s, but you still see it in stores. I'm joking. He doesn't have that in his office, as far as I'm aware. But
All right. Well, what's going on in the world, Chris?
well, we do need to be in prayer for peace and stability in India and Pakistan, and we also need to be in prayer for the missionaries that many churches have in places like India. And I bring this up because on AFN.net you can read this story. India fired missiles at Pakistan early today. And what it said was retaliation for last month's massacre of Indian tourists. Pakistan called the strikes an act of war and said more than 24 people were killed, including children. The strikes targeted at least 9 sites where terrorist attacks against India have been planned. And India and Pakistan are still at it today, kind of trading war of words with one another. A very volatile situation because these two countries, which used to be one big country, do not get along. And, oh, by the way, both of them have nuclear capabilities. So it's a big issue of concern and something maybe even the Trump administration is having to watch today.
Do you understand this? Is this a how long does this go back? Do you know?
Oh, this goes. Pakistan and India have had hot wars before, and I'm just amazed at how well the religion of peace, by that I mean Islam, how well they are, how much they're contributing to the good of humanity, because this was started with terrorist attacks, right?
Correct.
Okay, so India goes, well, we got to respond. And you remember, even when the U.S. was in Afghanistan, the terrorists would take refuge across the border in Pakistan because Pakistan is a Muslim country. It's the reason why they split off from India, is because India is mostly Hindu and Pakistan's mostly Muslim. So this kind of conflict has been going on for a long time, but we got the Houthis in Yemen, you got Hamas in Gaza. Everywhere you look, the radicals in Islam are causing trouble, and people are having to retaliate in a military fashion.
But these are bordering countries, and India is actually the second most populated country in the world. No, they're number one. They surpassed China.
I think they did. I think you're right.
They surpassed China. Probably China's one-child policy for how long that went, a couple decades anyway. That probably, contributed to India's overtaking them in terms of population. But Pakistan, of course, borders just to the north. And so, but both of them have nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I don't know, for some reason I didn't realize Pakistan did, but
they do.
Yeah,
and so anytime you have hostilities with two nuclear powers, and this was part of the reason why Americans in this country were nervous about us getting too involved in the Russia-Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. People saying, well, we just need to, supply weapons and NATO needs to get involved, but Russia is a nuclear power, so you got to be careful.
Is this an Islam versus Hindu thing?
I don't know what the genesis of this conflict is, except for the terrorism. This is what what India was claiming.
Well, most acts of terrorism done by Muslims are done in the name of Allah.
Yes.
Done in the name of advancing their religion.
Yes.
By killing the infidel and
Yes.
scaring the infidel, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what most acts of Islamic terrorism involve, or the motivation for it. And you do have a lot of what do you call them? Fundamentalist Islamic
Yes.
People in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people, the argument is, do these radicals, these fundamentalist Muslims, do they represent true Islam, or are they an aberration? And I personally believe that these radicals represent actual Islam, but I'm not an expert. So
Well, we should stay out of it.
So that's
U.S., right?
Oh, we should stay out of this.
Yeah.
And there is another. So you have Pakistan, just like you said, to the kind of north of India, and then right to the east of Pakistan is this area. I think it's called Kashmir, and it is controlled by India, but Pakistan thinks it belongs to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where these terrorist attacks happened,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Where they killed tourists. And so
Indian tourist.
Mm-hmm.
I get.
Must have been.
This says 24 civilians, mostly tourists. This is from CNN.
Correct.
And so I'm guessing that those are Indian civilians. But it would be similar to if the drug cartels in Mexico started attacking civilian U.S. citizens in America across the border. How would we respond? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame India for attacking these radicals' bases in Pakistan, because Pakistan's clearly not doing anything to stop them, and that's what we would behave the same way if our civilians were attacked.
Speaking of Muslims, 2 countries that border Pakistan include Afghanistan and Iran, which are Muslim countries. Now, they may not be the same kind of Muslims that Pakistan has, but if, God forbid, India were to shoot something at Pakistan and miss and hit Afghanistan or Iran, you're talking about a whole new discussion here that we're going to have to go over. So that's why I say we do need to be in prayer about this. And I know my church, there's a whole bunch of churches that have missionaries or do mission work in places like India. So pray for the peace and protection of those folks over there trying to share the gospel with folks.
Next story.
In other news, later today, the House Oversight Committee is going to be having a hearing on the issue and dangers involving males and female sports. Various members of the House, Republican and Democrat, are going to be hearing from female athletes and others on the dangers of allowing males and female sports. So today's witnesses include people like Peyton McNabb. She was a high school volleyball player who took a volleyball to the face. It was served by a male pretending to be a female, and she was severely injured by that.
It was a spike, wasn't
Yes.
it? Rather than just
It wasn't a serve.
It was. Thank you very much. So she took a volleyball to the face because she was on a team that was having to compete against another team with a male on that female volleyball team. She's going to be talking to lawmakers as well as Stephanie Turner. Stephanie Turner was the lady that was on the news a few weeks ago because she is a fencer who didn't want to fence against a male identifying as a female. I talked to a lady named Macy Petty. Macy Petty is a former college volleyball player who now works for Concerned Women for America, and she's very glad to see lawmakers continue to have hearings like this. Clip 6.
There's these national governing bodies, NGBs, things like USA Fencing, USA Swimming, USA Volleyball, that do a lot of the sports governance here in the United States and have been one of the number one organizations at fault for the lack of protections for women in sports. And Congress actually certifies these NGBs through something called the Ted-Stevens Act. And so I'm grateful that they are finally adding some accountability here and asking questions to these NGBs.
Now, I'm going to be monitoring this hearing, and later today, Lord willing, we'll have some audio from the witnesses and then follow-up coverage for you guys tomorrow.
Well, this battle continues to go on, and it's going on because even though the majority of people in this country don't like the idea of men participating in women's sports, women and girls sports, because it's not just at the collegiate level. It's also down in high school and probably even younger. Even though the vast majority, it's in the 70 percentile. You have the Democratic Party that is doubling down on wanting men in girls' sports. You have some of these athletic organizations that continue to either drag their feet or stand up for, quote unquote, transgender women, which means not really women. And you have officials in education that seem, you have governors. The governor of Maine, she's going down with the ship on this. She's going to fight the Trump administration.
Remember the Maine?
Over funding. Yeah, remember the Maine. So you have a significant percentage, I don't know what it amounts to, but of
why
power brokers who want to stay in this fight.
Why are these people staying with this? This is like...
It's a losing battle.
This is like 2 + 2 = 7. That's what they want us to believe. And they're going to they're to hill to down for some of these people. Why are they doing this?
My belief, I can't prove this, I can't get in their heads.
Yeah.
But my belief is that if they back off this fight, it's like admitting that the God of the universe who created us male and female, and they can't lose that fight. They can't lose that fight, or they have to agree with the old model. And now you're getting into territory where you're talking male, female, man woman marriage and all those kinds of things. You cannot, once you build this rickety bridge across this canyon, the LGBTQ thing, you can't start pulling pillars down, because the whole thing can come down. And I think they understand that. They have got to make this fight. Otherwise, they have to admit that what we used to believe is more true than what they believe now.
But let me ask you one other thing about that related to that, and Chris has some stuff. So these are the same folks who tell us that we need to believe in science when it comes to like COVID, for example.
Right.
Or climate change.
We're science deniers.
Right.
And then you want to say, well, what about the XX and XY chromosome difference? That's science, right? That's settled science for how long?
Yes. Since we've known a chromosome.
And so you say that to somebody who pushes this idea that men can be women if they call themselves so. Why don't they compute that one?
Well, because what they really mean when they say follow the science, what they really mean is follow the ideology. And ideology is not always scientific. So they're telling what they really mean. I don't even know if they know this, but what they really mean is you follow the science as long as it supports our ideology.
Right.
If it doesn't support our ideology, we kick it to the curb.
We go with ideology.
Because we go with ideology.
And with feelings.
And with feelings.
Yeah.
And with the individual being absolutely in charge of their life. No one can tell them what to do, not even God, and in this case, not even nature. If a person, that's why you get this craziness. I'm sure this is not all across the country, but where schools will put a litter box. Wasn't there a school that, because this one girl considered herself to be a furry or a cat?
There have been stories. Even people here have shared stories about how they've heard this is occurring even in places here in Mississippi. But there have been stories and third-hand accounts of litter boxes being in schools for kids identifying as
whether or not that may not be true. It's probably not widespread. But you are catering to the individual declaration that I am a furry, I am not a girl, even though I look like a girl, or I have the chromosomes of a girl. So the ideology is the individual is completely in charge. We've all seen on social media these men on the street interviews on college campuses where a conservative will ask college kids, you have a man asking the question, is it okay if I declare myself to be a 6'5" Chinese woman? What do you say? And they'll say, well, okay, if that's what you think.
But most of them do have to pause.
Yes.
They do have to pause because they want to say, of course not. But then they realize if they say, of course not, then they can't say. Then they're agreeing with those who say a male is a male and a female is a female.
They pause because they realize that the evidence that's being presented goes against their ideology, and they have to consult their ideology to tell them what they're supposed to say.
Right. Have y'all seen this ad, this TV ad for, I think it's Apple, with this, it's got this boy with his shirt off, flexing he's a teenage boy with his shirt off, flexing his muscles, and his grandma's taking pictures of him with an iPhone. I think
it is. I've seen it.
You seen? And then the dude's his head's made up to look like a girl. He's got a page cut. Is that what you call it when it comes down there?
Yeah, it looks like Lord Farquaad from Shrek, if you've ever seen that. Yeah.
And this is the ad where
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, he wants to get rid of his grandma because there's a reflection in the mirror.
Yeah.
So
so it's a weird looking dude.
Yeah.
Because and you're going, the first time you see that ad, you're going, are they trying to say is he trying to be a trans?
Yeah.
And you're going, yep, that's what they're trying to be. Because, am I right? The head looks like he wants to be a girl.
Yes.
And his body looks.
They're blurring the lines and claiming to be gender fluid because that's the ideology is you're not allowed to tell anyone what to think, even about nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think also that's being pushed heavily in the fashion industry or whatever. And so you got the androgynous look,
yes,
and a lot of the clothing ads and
You dealt with that when you were coming out of high school and first part of college when you had like a Billy.
I was not androgynous.
Well, no, but
you confronted it.
I did.
Who was the guy from Culture Club back in the early to mid '80s?
Talking about
Boy George.
Boy George.
Yeah, he kind of started a movement 40 years ago on that.
David Bowie was one of the first to do that androgynous look.
Very odd.
There's that star. Anyway, you're right. Those were the first ones back in the back in the even
Ziggy
70s.
Stardust.
And you had like Twisted Sister. They looked like they were gonna go to Drag Queen Story Hour.
Yeah.
After performing a.
And all the people who said this is wrong were mocked or ignored because they would say, including I'm sure AFA back in the day, we would all say this is not going to end well, and everyone would say, you're just a killjoy, but look where it's taken us.
Yeah.
Now I will say, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to reset and tell folks that you're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, and Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
So a number of red states have taken steps in recent years to say no more males in female sports. But now that issue is spreading to purple states, including Pennsylvania, which yesterday the Pennsylvania State Senate approved a bill to ban biological males from competing in women's and girls' sports at the collegiate and K-12 levels. This was a Republican-led Senate. It is unlikely to get a vote in the state's Democrat-controlled House of Representatives. However, 5 Democrats in the Pennsylvania Senate crossed party lines yesterday to join all Republicans in voting for this bill. So you might actually see some Democrats join Republicans here in the House if it actually comes up for vote.
If you're a Democrat and you see the national leadership of the Democratic Party defending this insanity, trans insanity, if you see them defending men in women's sports, winning. There's some guy who just won a bunch of races, and the girls who were competing against, they thought they were racing against a woman, and he won like 5 races, and these girls are all going. We didn't know that he was a guy and had those kinds of advantages. But if you're watching the Democratic national leadership defend this, and you're in a state level or you're an up-and-comer, some of these folks, I'm guessing, are going to say, I am not going to go along with defending that.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to lose.
Right. I'm not going to lose my race over this, issue. Huh?
That's what I think. And that's why I think you see some
Democrats from conservative areas or moderate areas.
Yeah. This is big because Pennsylvania is kind of the ground zero of the transgender movement when it comes to sports like swimming. because that's where Will Thomas
Yes.
wanted to compete against females like Riley Gaines, and he beat her many times. Even though teammates of his like Paula Scanlon were like, "This isn't right that we have a dude on this team."
Well, the Olympics are coming here next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, they're coming here. Yes.
And the president, Trump, has already said only males, biological males and females who are going to compete will be allowed entry into our country.
This is the story I was talking about. This was on Fox News. Transgender swimmer wins 5 women's gold medals at championship meet in Texas.
Texas?
Yep. The controversy prompted backlash on social media, and what was happening was the women, they
swimming. You say
they said we didn't know we were swimming against a man who claimed to be a woman.
Really? Read the first paragraph.
It says a transgender swimmer won 5 women's races at the U.S. Masters Swimming Spring National Championship last weekend. The swimmer, 47-year-old Anna Caldas, dominated all 5 races the athlete competed in, taking the gold in the women's age 45 to 49 category in 5 races, including the 50 and 100-yard breaststroke, freestyle, and the 100-yard individual medley. And look at this guy. Look, that's
a dude.
That's a dude. Look at the shoulders on that guy. Oh, man.
So he's the one who won?
He's the one that won.
Calls himself a girl?
Yeah. And so
I can't believe now maybe that wasn't a state of Texas sanctioned event, but I think that sounds like a national event that happened that happened to be held in Texas.
Yes. That's what it sounds like.
U.S. Masters.
Because I don't think Texas
probably allows that.
Allows that.
It's clearly because of the age, it's beyond the collegiate level, but still, these women
Let me ask you this.
said they didn't know.
Why do these dudes feel the need to put makeup on and grow their hair like a girl?
Because they see themselves as women.
I think some of them just
want
to
to win.
Why
can't they just
too.
identify as one? Why do they have to?
That is actually a good question, because
All you
if
gotta
they're
do is say-
changing their appearance, you're saying, what are you trying to look like? A woman?
Yeah.
Well, so you're saying a woman's different than a man?
That's my point. It was a good one. We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Some time ago, a company advertised in New York newspapers to fill a vacancy on its sales force. It seems as though the company was in need of a furniture salesman. Several people answered the ad, more than 1,500 in all. But one of the applicants turned in what was probably the most unusual resume in history. This particular applicant sent back the following reply. I am presently selling furniture at the address below. You may judge my ability as a salesman if you'll stop in to see me at any time, pretending that you're interested in buying furniture. When you come in, you may identify me by my red hair. I will have no way of identifying you. Such salesmanship as I exhibit during your visit will be no more than my usual workaday approach. I'll make no special effort to impress a prospective employer. Well, I think most of us will agree that that was indeed an unusual reply to an ad. Most of us would have written back, telling of our good points and explaining to the company why they should hire us. Or if the prospective employer was going to visit us on the job, we would at least like to know which one he was so we could be on the ball and do an outstanding job. After all, most of us do want to impress the boss. But here was a man who was willing to be himself. Here was a man who wanted his employer to know exactly the type of salesman he was hiring before he hired him. Here was a man who was confident of his ability. He wasn't showy or pretentious or superficial. He may not be the world's greatest salesman, but he did the best he could at all times, and he was not ashamed of his best. He could greet and treat all people with equal respect regardless of their rank or position. You know, there's a lesson in this story, a true one incidentally, for modern man. When you give your job and anything else your best, you don't have to apologize because you don't have the talent or gifts or money or position of someone else. When you can take any and every person and treat them as though they are your future employer, you have reached a place in life where life can be enjoyed. The one thing that caused so much friction between the carpenter and that group known as the Pharisees was the fact that they tried to put up a front, to be something they were not, to look down on others. And the one thing that caused his heart to go out to the woman who washed and wiped his feet when others wanted to get rid of her was the fact that she was willing to admit what she was. Usually, life's best results come from accepting yourself for what you are, and then beginning from that point. It did for the furniture salesman. We said more than 1,500 people applied for that job. They did. They sure did. But do you know who got it? You're right. He sure did.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Beloved, we are now children of God, and what we will be has not yet been revealed. We know that when Christ appears, we will be like him, for we will see him as he is, and everyone who has this hope in him purifies himself just as Christ is pure. 1 John 3, 2 and 3.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, and Chris, we thank you for listening to AFR. All right, Ed, you want to set up our next segment?
Absolutely. Want to welcome to the program Daniel Copeland, who's Vice President of Research at Barna. And we're going to be talking with him about a study regarding the state of Christianity in the U.S. Daniel, welcome to Today's Issues.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
Well, I wanted to, we've been trying to get you on here for the last couple of weeks. I saw an article that got sent to me towards the tail end, middle of April. This is from an April 7th press release from Barna, your group, and it says, new research, belief in Jesus rises, fueled by younger adults. Now, you know, we had kind of been hearing that the rise of the nuns, so to speak, N-O-N-E-S, was significant, that people were leaving church. They, you know, belief in God was shriveling. But this research, this new research, seems to indicate that, once again, things have changed a little bit in our culture. So please address that. And then this fairly surprising part of it, that young people seem to be driving this change.
Absolutely. So thank you again for having me on. So yes, at Barna Group, we research the intersection of faith and culture. And what we've found in the last year is that the belief in Jesus among Americans is rising. What we find is that 66%, so almost 7 out of 10, all U.S. adults today say that they have made a personal commitment to Jesus that is still important in their life today. And what's so exciting about this is that this is a 12 percentage point increase since 2021, at which point commitment levels to Jesus had reached the lowest point in almost 30 years. So in aggregate, that means that there are 30 million more American adults today following Jesus than they did just a few years ago, which is incredibly exciting news when for so long we've been hearing stories about the decline of church, the decline of belief in God. To see that there's an exciting spiritual resurgence and renewal happening where, like I said, 66% of U.S. adults say they have made this personal commitment to following Christ. It's actually really exciting. It's one of the most exciting things we've been able to release in the last year or two, and we're thrilled to share the story of it.
Well, Daniel, one of the things that I appreciate about Barna is that you're very careful to kind of tease out who is actually an evangelical, okay? Because there are, you would probably know the numbers, but I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But those who claim to be born again in America, that is a super high number. But once Barna begins to kind of dig down and define what they mean by that, your research becomes even more helpful to us to figure out what the actual trends are. Why is that important to do?
Well, so what you're talking about is how in research we're looking at how to operationalize different experiences that people are having today. So, for example, still to this day, about 7 out of 10 Americans will identify as a Christian, 7 out of 10, but only about 4 out of 10 Americans go to church on a regular basis. So we, in our research, we're trying to illuminate things like, well, what's the difference between just identifying as Christian and attending a church? So if 7 out of 10 identify as Christian, 4 out of 10 go to church. What we find is that there's only about 2 out of 10 people who are actually truly engaged in their faith. They go to church, they identify as Christian, and their faith really matters to them. It helps make the decisions in their life. It leads them to relationships. It's part of how they relate to their friends and their family. And so what we're trying to accomplish in the world is helping church leaders understand the different needs of these different groups. Maybe the person who identifies as Christian but isn't attending church needs something different from their church and needs a different message or different care. And for that person who is that really, really engaged Christian, how do we empower them to go make a difference in their community? So as a research firm, we're trying to give form, we're trying to give application points to church leaders today to understand the different moments, the different spiritual journeys that people are on in their lives today.
Folks, our guest is Daniel Copeland, who's Vice President of Research at Barna, and we're discussing with Daniel a study that indicates that belief in Jesus rises fueled by younger adults. That's the headline of their press release. Chris, you had a question?
I do, yes. Building off your previous answer there, we are blessed to have a lot of pastors, deacons, Sunday school teachers listening. What do those people need to do to, A, make sure they're ready for these young adults, should they have them in their next worship service? But more importantly, what should they be doing to make sure these people are not only saved, they actually know and are good students of the Word?
Absolutely. Great question. So if you're a church leader and you're hearing this data that there's a resurgence in belief and commitment to Christ, what do you do to prepare in your own church? How do we care for a new person who might walk through the door who has heard of this Jesus figure? This is particularly important when we look at this data and we find that younger generations of U.S. adults, particularly Gen Z and millennials, they're leading this surge. It's young people who are making these commitments, these new commitments to Christ. So as a church leader, what might you be thinking about? Well, first, you'd be thinking about how there's so much information in the world today when it comes to the person of Jesus. And what's really interesting about this data specifically is that what we find is that a lot of the growth is being led, yes, by young people, but it's also being led by people who don't actually describe themselves as a Christian. So they might be following Christ. They say, I like this Christ person. I want to be more like him, but they don't think of themselves as a Christian. And so if I was a church leader and I was hearing this information, I'd be thinking through, I want to really empower this person to follow that person of Jesus, but I also don't want to make assumptions around what they might know about the church itself, what Christian community is like, how a Sunday worship service works. We want to keep them focused on that person of Jesus, but maybe let's not over-assume about their knowledge of the church or of Christian community. There's so much more for them to experience. So empower them, lift them up in those interests to be Christ-like, as we also don't make assumptions about what they might know or think or have experienced about the church itself. We have to kind of tease these things apart, recognizing that almost 3 in 10 people who don't identify as Christian say they are following Christ. That's actually pretty stark. That's a lot of people. So how do we care for them? How do we empower that Christ-likeness that they're pursuing while also acknowledging they might be new to this Christian thing?
This is Tim, by the way, thanks for being on with us. Daniel, let me ask you this. Did you say 4 out of 10 Americans go to church?
That's what our data indicates. What we find is that, and that's, I should have been more specific and said that 4 out of 10 Americans attend church on at least a monthly basis. If you get down to the weekly level, it's just less than 1 out of 3.
Okay, so 1 out of 3 go weekly, and 4 out of
10 go.
4 out of 10 go monthly.
At least a month, once a month.
Yes,
I'm
correct.
surprised it's that high. I know that's really,
a lot of people are.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's that high anymore. Now, 50 years ago in the United States, probably 75-80% of people went to church somewhere twice a month at least.
Yeah,
I'm getting. We were a very religious country,
right,
and very church attending.
Yeah,
country.
Well, and it would appear in shows like the Andy Griffith Show,
sure,
where they went to church. That was a regular part of their life.
Yeah. So, so 4 out of 10 go monthly. Okay, I got you. That's just broadly and generally. That's the general American public. It doesn't say what church they go to or anything like that. What kinds of
Correct.
church?
That's just among all U.S. adults.
Yeah. What about, have y'all done any surveys, there are, I would suspect in today's culture, a lot of people who say they're spiritual. I've heard it. You hear it over and over and over again, especially when celebrities are interviewed, because they don't want to be part of that religious
crowd.
Religious nut, the Christian nut jobs, and bigots. They don't want to be part of them. So then now those people, they would be like talking about people like us,
right?
Now, I would argue we're mischaracterized, but
yes,
okay. But they would say, "Oh, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious." You get that over and over again. And then if you hear them interviewed, you go, "That's a bunch of mushy."
Yeah.
You don't have a doctrine you believe in. It's just whatever you get up that day and feel like.
Yeah.
Whatever spirit led you to do. That's how they describe their spirituality. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, any research along the lines of, as Ed called them, Bible believing versus non-Bible believing religious people?
Yeah. So the spiritual but not religious, as they're often referred to, or the nuns, as you referred to them earlier, NONES. So let's look at the broad scope of Americans, like we did just a second ago. As I said, 7 out of 10 people just identify as a Christian. That doesn't mean they attend a church. That doesn't mean that they are even necessarily following Jesus or reading Scripture. But 7 out of 10 identify as Christian. Of the remaining 3 people, so 7 out of 10 identify as Christian, of the remaining 3, one of those people is of a different religious faith. They're Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever it might be, but they're of a different religious faith. And then the other 2 people identify as either being atheist, agnostic, or of no religious faith, sometimes the nuns, nothing in particular. If you just look at those 2 people, half of them have a Christian background. They grew up in a Christian home. Sometimes that's really surprising to think about, because still a lot of people with Christian backgrounds who just don't do they don't identify, they don't attend church. So what we found over time is that basically a lot of those people who are outside of a religious identity, saying that they are Christian or saying that they are pursuing the likeness of Christ, a lot of them have Christian or faith-based backgrounds, and they find ways that they kind of have a bit of maybe what you'd call like an a la carte mentality, where they pick out the things that they really enjoy. Maybe that's prayer. Maybe that's reading Scripture. Maybe that is, for some of them, it's actually attending a church service. They like the liturgy of church. They like the people of church. They just don't like the Christian label or the commitment to following Jesus. And so you have a lot of people in society today who want to build it themselves, want to make their own.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's Build-A-Bear.
In a way, yeah. They want to, like that a la carte sort of, I want A and B, but not C and D.
Right.
And what we actually find, there's some research we did a few years ago that was a book called Engaging the Spiritually Open, is that people outside of the church actually have a very, very spiritual disposition. And that a lot of times it also means that they really like the person of Jesus, and they even like the acts of Jesus, the spirituality of Jesus, the practices of Jesus. They can just have a problem with church or the identification of being Christian. And so there's a bit of redemptive work that has to be done alongside all of this, of displaying to them that there can be goodness found in the church, and that there can be community found in the church, and that their interest with the spiritual, with the person of Jesus, can be found in community as well.
Yeah. Our guest has been Daniel Copeland, Vice President of Research at Barna. Daniel, before we let you go, why don't you tell folks how they can find out more information and some of the research that they can find at Barna?
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me today. So Barna Group, we are a research organization studying the intersection of faith and culture. You can always find everything you need to know about Barna at our website, barna.org. This year, we have a huge initiative that this Jesus research is a part of called State of the Church 2025, where we're trying to equip church leaders with the most pressing insights to what's happening with the church and Christianity today, and how can you be equipped to lead in a constant aura of change and disruption. If you're really engaged with our work, check out Barna Access Plus. It's an awesome opportunity to get all of our content and all of our findings in the quickest and most efficient way. So thrilled to be on the program today. Thank you guys again.
All right. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it, my friend.
That's fascinating. And it to me, the thing I like the most about that is that there are a lot of people out there who are technically outside the church, but who seem to be open to the Christian witness. And we could make a huge impact on this country if the church and people who attend church regularly and are Christian and believe the Bible and follow Jesus, if they will reach out to these people
and hit them over the head with the Bible. I think I think that's the way to go. Buy a bigger Bible, hit them harder.
Well, that wasn't what I had in mind, but that might work for some. Who knows?
Yeah.
I have a different. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say I took away something else from the report, which, by the way, I did share that on our Today's Issues Facebook page. If you're a millennial or a Gen Zer and you're listening to the show, first of all, thank you for that. But
I'm a baby boomer and don't even know what they are.
Well, that's where I'm going. In their report here, they say, quote, since the pandemic, millennials and Gen Z have shown significant increases in commitment to Jesus, while boomers and Gen X, especially women, have remained mostly flat in their commitment levels to Jesus. So if you're a younger person listening to this show, invite one of your elders to church, because they even found that boomers and Gen Xers are falling away.
Yeah, maybe the young people ought to take over the witnessing. Went over some of those agnostic, lazy baby boomers.
Yeah.
I saw a Babylon Bee a couple of days ago, and it said missionaries from Africa come to the U.S. to share the gospel and help people get right with Jesus.
Yeah.
That's kind of the direction we're going in this country. People from abroad are going to start coming here.
Yeah. Plenty of work to do here.
Yeah.
So what's your approach? Since my approach is hitting people with the Bible.
I'm cynical about the whole thing. I don't know if you get that or not.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm not disputing Daniel or Barna's findings and their surveys.
Right.
I just think that I get tired of the burden being put on by those of us who do believe in the in the gospel message of repentance and turning your life around and living for Jesus hour to hour, day to day.
Yeah.
And somehow we're supposed to make it possible for these people to accept that lifestyle when they don't want to. Because they don't want to, because people people will acknowledge, hey, Jesus is a great teacher, or Jesus is a great person. But you say, well, do you want to take up your cross and follow him? No, I don't even know what you're talking about right there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You get a lot of that in American society, that they would not say, they don't even know what the central message of the gospel is. They just know Jesus loved people, and you need to love people.
So you're saying you think a certain percentage, maybe even a high percentage of these individuals that Barna has found are in that category?
Yeah.
So that you're saying they're not necessarily genuine Christians just because they answer a survey and say, yeah, I believe in Jesus and I follow Jesus.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think it's very superficial and very. It's still not popular to be an atheist in America. I mean, nobody says, "Hey, I'm." Not everybody, but most people are going to say they're spiritual.
Yeah.
If they're not a Christian who's surrendered their life to Christ, then they're going to say they're spiritual.
Yeah.
They're not. Here, you're going to get this one a lot too. I'm spiritual, but I just don't believe in organized religion.
Yes, that is true.
You're going to see that over and over and over and over again. They're going to say, organized religion is what's destroyed the church.
Yeah.
And then they're going to say, look at the Catholic Church with the priest molesting. That's just the road they go down.
Right.
And so they're going to say, look at the so-called Christians supporting Trump and all his moral failures, and how can that be? They're a bunch of hypocrites, Yeah, that's the stuff you're going to get by these people, and then they're going to say, "But I'm spiritual, but I'm not. I'm just not religious."
Yeah, but you're not saying that Christians shouldn't try to reach those folks with the gospel. I mean,
no, but to say they already are reached.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't count those people in the number of folks who are living for Jesus Christ every day. They're not redeemed. They don't understand the gospel message fully.
And it's probably also true that the percentage. First of all, let me just say, I like Barna.
I do too.
And I like George Barna himself, who started Barna Research, who has gone off and started his own, another group. Those two research groups do the best they can with polling to try to isolate these kinds of differences. But I also think that when 4 out of 10 say they go to church at least once a month, some of those are going to churches that we would look at and say, well, that church is Ichabod, they don't even believe that Jesus is the only way. So, there are those distinctions that are important to make. We certainly shouldn't, puff up and say, wow, America's on the right track, because clearly America morally is not behaving like a nation filled with Christ followers. Yeah. So that's a valid point to make.
Okay, now related to that, have you noticed all the church name changes the last 20 years, 25 years, sort of related to that?
So you're talking about like evangelical churches
trying to change
are all named after a stream or
trying to change. Have a lot of churches and denominations have been changing their names to change their image.
They're not First Baptist anymore.
There's a First Baptist, but they're hanging on. They're hanging on to their name.
But you have Second Baptist has changed to Streams in the Desert.
Yes. Well, I always thought it was funny to me that a church wanted to be named First Methodist, First Baptist, First Presbyterian, because I'm thinking the Bible clearly says the first shall be last. Am I right?
There was
what is wrong about what I just said?
So there should be Last Baptist Church.
That's what I would have gone with.
That's where you want to go, is the Last Baptist.
If I was a deacon or an elder, I would have said, we're going to go with Last Baptist Church. We're not going with First Baptist when the church was founded.
Yes.
For the reason I just mentioned.
There was a time in America where there was even like a Second Baptist Church and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
right.
I've seen
there's
one.
Third Baptist.
Yes, like at what point do you stop like claiming that. Yeah.
I think sixth.
Right.
You don't want to be like 666 Baptist
plain
Church.
Plain old Baptist
My
church.
church here in Tupelo was a Second Baptist at one point.
Really? Did you feel like a second-class citizen?
It was long before me. Yeah, I wasn't in that meeting.
So
I like the idea of Last Baptist because it almost sounds like last chance for gas. You have 200 miles, of desert. And Last Baptist, this is your last chance, folks.
Crackers and juice.
Well, I was reading about this, and the changes that maybe we can pull this over to the next hour. Anyway, you mentioned the change. We were talking about changes in church names over the last 20 years. And this article says that point has become what's that word?
Ubiquitous.
What does that mean?
It means everywhere.
Okay, everywhere. So you're going to see point in a lot of churches. Life Point, Cross Point.
I think we got a cross point in this.
Grace Point, Life Point, Cross Point, huh?
Yes.
We got a Cross Point, yeah.
There's a Cross Point church in our.
There's a Cross Point in every town now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So point's a big word in new church names. Yeah. So life has is also being used.
Well, and some of these United Methodist churches that have gone fully in support of LGBTQ, some of them are taking the name Last Gasp. Last Gasp.
Church of the Last Gasp.
Yeah, folks. I'm just saying, if you support LGBTQ
I don't think they're listening to us. I think they've turned the radio off.
First of all, if you are, you need to stop doing that.
Yes.
And tell your pastor to get with it.
So what about this?
Methodist Church.
Have you heard new church names include Life Church, Real Life, New Life? There's a lot of new lives.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Life Point.
Oh, that's combining them.
Life Point's combining them.
Life Stream Point. That would be perfect.
City Church is a big one now.
City Church.
Usually with another name in front of it. These churches can be found in cities, suburbs, and the country. Well, what else is left? They can be found in all those places. City Church. That's a big name, big name across the country now. All right, we'll be back with more of today's issues on American Family Radio. We may help you figure out a new name for your church.
Oh, let's change the name of our show.
Yeah, well.
New stream of Life Point.
We'll be back. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Radio has always been portable, but thanks to technology, AFR apps have redefined our portability. Whether you prefer Apple or Android, we've got you covered on your phone or tablet. We're also available on Roku, and of course, you can get Alexa to play us on your smart device. Take us with you across town or across the country. Visit afr.net or your app store today.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. U.S. officials set to meet with their Chinese counterparts as the Trump administration seeks trade deals in exchange for tariff relief. Peter Ducey has the latest from the White House.
We've learned that this weekend's U.S.-China talks in Switzerland are really just a meeting about a meeting. And we have a much better idea about the White House's approach to these talks today after the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney debriefed us about his sit-down with President Trump.
I look forward, not back, and I think we established a good basis today.
It's possible these trade deals could soon be announced one at a time, but the president is teasing a massive Liberation Day-style mass announcement. And ahead of a visit to 3 countries in the Middle East next week, President Trump is also teasing a major announcement coming either tomorrow or Friday.
India launching missiles into Pakistan early Wednesday in response to a recent massacre of Indian tourists. Pakistan's military reporting 6 sites were struck by missiles, adding that more than 24 people were killed. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce says the U.S. is continuing to monitor the situation. and says Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been speaking with officials from both countries about de-escalation.
He spoke with the national security individuals for both countries last night. His point to them was to make sure that lines of communication should stay open, that he would be able to help facilitate whatever they needed.
A Republican senator is urging President Trump to pick a different nominee to lead the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C.
North Carolina Republican Tom Tillis will not support Ed Martin's nomination for U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, putting confirmation at risk. Martin has been serving as the interim U.S. Attorney, but if he is not confirmed within 120 days, the federal district court can name a new acting prosecutor. That court is led by Judge James Boasberg, who has come under attack by President Trump over his rulings on high-profile deportation cases. Tillis says the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, can sidestep the court if she names an interim attorney before Martin's term expires. President Trump is so far standing by Martin, writing on Truth Social. His approval is imperative. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
A group of Democratic governors plans to testify before Congress on the policies of sanctuary states and cities on June 12th. House Judiciary Committee Chairman and Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan says he believes Americans are getting sick of these policies, and the hearing is meant to show how ineffective sanctuary states and cities really are.
This is ridiculous when you have these left-wing federal judges, left-wing municipalities and states doing these crazy sanctuary policies. I do think the American people get it because the American people have common sense.
A conservative military watchdog is welcoming a decision by the Supreme Court to allow a Trump executive order regarding so-called transgenders in the military to take effect, at least for now. More from Chad Groening.
By a 6-3 vote, the Supreme Court allowed President Donald Trump's administration to enforce a ban on transgender people in the military, while legal challenges proceed. When he signed the executive order, Trump made it clear that the sexual identity of transgender service members, quote, conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life, and is harmful to military readiness. 3 federal judges had ruled against the ban. Elaine Donnelly is president of the Center for Military Readiness.
This is a very welcome decision on the part of the Supreme Court. The main point about it is that gender dysphoria is a medical condition. It's associated with clinically significant disease or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. So it's a medical condition, one of hundreds, that make a person ineligible for military service.
Donnelly says it's going to take time for the 3 lawsuits to wind through the courts.
But in the meantime, this president, at least in this case, will be allowed to pursue and implement the policy that he and the people in his administration have determined is important for military readiness and lethality and morale and all the rest. So it's a good decision.
I'm Chad Groening.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Some chances come along once in a lifetime. When they do, you've got to be ready. AFA Action's Center for Judicial Renewal has such a chance to help the Trump administration make good choices, nominating men and women as Supreme Court justices and other federal judges. Your gift helps make that possible, and we'll give you a free Bible study by Stephen McDowell, God's Blueprint for Life, Liberty, and Property, as a thank you gift. Visit afaaction.net today. afaaction.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
The radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim with Ed, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us. Good morning, Brother Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
He's in uniform.
Yes, I am in uniform.
Rocking the Paisley. Hey, you guys, just wanted to tell everybody that if you're going to travel on an airplane, a commercial airplane I'm talking about, starting today, you're going to need something called Real ID.
Did you ever check yours to see?
I did, and I didn't have the star.
Oh, you didn't, so you got to go.
I go get it, but I do have a passport.
Yeah. Okay.
So your passport overrides all.
Yeah.
I mean, but a lot of people don't take their passport when they're only going to travel domestically on a commercial airplane. But I'm just saying today is the day that the federal government institutes the Real ID Steve? Do you know enough to describe that?
Yeah, it's basically when you apply for identification for certain things, like for boarding an airplane, is what most people are talking about. You have to have presented some evidence that you are a citizen or that you are who you say you are when you get a driver's license. They've just upped the stakes. It used to be you could bring a power bill in, and this is where I live, and they could do that. But now they're requiring a little more, and it's a little marker on the top right-hand corner of your.
Do you have yours?
I do. My driver's license.
Well, now I got to renew mine.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why
it automatically happened when I renew. Now I was talking with JJ, who said, "Yeah, I've got a real idea. It's got that heart at the bottom of the." I said, no, right. That's an organ donor.
So you're an organ donor?
I'm an organ donor, and I have the real ID.
What organs are you donating?
Whatever they need after I'm gone.
They can take whatever they want?
As long as I'm gone.
Oh, yeah. We want to make sure of that.
Yes.
So. I don't think I'm an organ donor. I'm changing the subject because I think, who wants my organs? I'm almost 67 years old. I mean,
they might take that into consideration. I've had this kind of hard on my.
Is there no like?
Yeah, have you ever been an organ donor though? Even when you were 27?
I don't know.
You haven't ever donated organs.
They'll take 27-year-old.
Yeah, but I don't. I'm just curious. It just came into my head. I wonder if there are like age limits. Yeah, where you go, I'm sorry, Mr. Vitagliano, but your organs are practically expired anyway.
Right.
Why are we going to put them in a young person?
The problem is that there are so few people, so few organs around. If someone needs a heart,
hey, it's a good thing to be. It's a good thing to be an organ donor.
All right.
I used to be. I'm not sure if I am now, but
now that you're getting your new driver's license, maybe you
sign up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, but
I'm sorry.
Steve's right though. You want to make sure you're gone.
Yeah, and that's not always the case. I mean,
we probably need to stop this conversation right here. I think everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah,
you just don't want to be pronounced dead somewhere in the middle of Africa. Yeah, what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think the problem is just Africa. I think here they'll keep your brain, like your body, alive, even if you have no brain waves.
Yeah,
so they can preserve your organs.
Yeah,
and listen.
Hey, this is a topic for another in 10 more years.
I say have at it.
Yeah, we'll revisit it.
All right, 67.
Hey, by the way,
pancreas, go for it.
So,
I'm sorry.
That was commentary by Ed Vitagliano. People, don't email me.
Oh, my pancreas, go for it.
So let me ask you this, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Right now in Rome,
yes,
the Catholic Church, and the representatives of the Catholic Church, being the cardinals.
Cardinals,
right?
133 of them.
133 cardinals are about to elect I say about to elect. I don't know what the exact procedure is, but they are going into a meeting. Is it going to be a closed meeting to elect a pope?
It is. It's called a conclave, and they proceeded in pairs. As if you're watching CNN right now, you can see this was recorded earlier, but they proceeded in pairs into the Sistine Chapel. Now, that's the one with the Michelangelo ceiling.
Oh, right? Yeah. I've been twice. That's the most awesome man-made architectural place I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
Now, when I say man-made, what I'm talking about is the art, the painting that done by Michelangelo inside the Sistine Chapel. When did he live? Like 800 years ago? Michelangelo. When did he? Maybe I've got him.
You always ask these questions.
I know, but I'm trying. I want to make sure.
He was in the 1500s.
Yeah, it was it was built. The Sistine Chapel was built between 1473 and 1481. So that must be when Michelangelo. And you talk about
he died in 1564.
A talented guy. Good grief.
Well, if you ever travel over there, you've got to go to the Sistine Chapel. And if you go to Rome, obviously, it's just it's indescribable. It'll blow you away when you think one person did all this.
Wow!
And they did it 600 years ago. Whenever you said it was
the ceiling. There's other artists who contributed to the walls and such.
There was a movie with Charlton Heston. I think. Doesn't he play Michelangelo?
He did it on his back.
Yeah, he painted the whole thing on his back on
played
on this
Moses.
scaffolding. No, he I'm gonna check on that because it was a very good movie and it kind of highlighted a lot of the politics involved.
You see what Michelangelo did laying on his back painting the Sistine Chapel, and you just think to yourself, what have I done with my life?
There's 100 right.
My back hurts when I sit in this chair for 30 minutes.
But you know, you're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah, I am.
Because the fact of the matter is, people like Michelangelo, they're 1 in 1,000 years kind of individuals.
True. Duly noted.
You know that,
and I'm not.
We're most of us,
and we recognize.
Yeah, we
it.
recognize that.
We're not one. We're not that one.
No,
are we?
No, absolutely not.
It takes some humility to admit that, I think.
Yes.
You think, Steve?
It would take humility maybe until I start drawing something, and then there's nothing needed except just there you go. You can see for yourself.
Oh yeah, when it comes to art and painting, I just say that wasn't my calling. What are you looking up, Ed?
This movie, Michelangelo.
Oh, with Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston.
You remember it, huh?
Agony and the Ecstasy. The Agony and the Ecstasy.
When was that released?
It was 1965. Okay. It is a really good movie.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, and it kind of highlights the some of the politics involved in those kinds of things, and they didn't want him doing it on his back, and he had a certain idea about what he should paint. Anyway,
he was commissioned by the Pope at that time.
Yes,
to do the artwork.
Pope Julius II.
Inside, and what is that painting that he, where God is reaching down to man?
Well, that's the top of the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is. But there's a name for that. There's a name for that particular painting. And you're right. It is in the Sistine Chapel.
It's the centerpiece of the Sistine Chapel.
It's not called the 16th Chapel. People, so don't go over there and ask directions to the 16th chapel. Okay, like there was 14, 15, and 16.
Sistine.
Sistine.
Tine.
Tine. What are you saying now?
I was just looking up Michelangelo. I believe all these long names. Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. Yeah. So he's known.
No wonder
mostly.
he got shortened. Who's going to call you that?
To answer your question, Tim, the creation of Adam.
There you go.
Okay. So the creation of Adam is a painting in the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo, and it's the famous one that everybody, even if they don't know the name of it, would recognize with the hand of God reaching down to the hand of man.
Right.
Have I described it right?
Yes. Yeah, and like touching the finger. And I think that's meant to represent the creation of man and being given the image of God.
Yes, amen, amen. All right.
Anything else you want to know about
well,
that?
I'll just say this about the Cardinals.
I can tell you a little bit about what's going to be going on there if you want.
Boy, and they've got are they called Cardinals because they wear the cardinal red?
Do we
know that? Because
the egg or the chicken. I don't know which.
I'm serious about this. I love the cardinal red attire.
Yeah. I don't know if they call it cardinal red because of the
or vice versa.
Or vice versa. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're all there, and so they are going to be sitting at desks. And from all, they took a vow of secrecy before they came in, and
everybody knows they're there now, though.
And no, it's not a secret that they're there, but they can't talk about what happens once.
Okay.
What goes on inside the Sistine Chapel during the
conclave
stays inside the Sistine Chapel.
And so this is the College of Cardinals.
It
right?
is. That's what they call them. And so they're meeting, and my understanding is what I heard today, at least on from some Catholic experts on Fox, was they're not going to be a big debate. There's no speeches going on. They basically sit there fairly quietly. They chat among each other, and then they pray and they talk a little bit, and then eventually they're going to vote after they've had a sufficient time of prayer.
So there's nobody like standing up and saying, I think we should vote for this guy.
There's no politicking. Not formally, not at least as a group. Now, as they eat together, they talk and, hey, do you know anything about this cardinal from Africa? Because I've heard his name. Is he any good? Then that's how they kind of, and then, so when they vote, every time they vote, they have a
chimney that comes out of the Sistine Chapel. I think they put it up just for this. And if they have not reached consensus on a new pope, they burn something in it that sends up black smoke.
Right.
And if they, when on the final time that they really do, they find the pope, they put something up that's white. They'll burn something, and all of a sudden, white smoke will be coming out of the.
That means
the
Roman Catholic Church has a new pope.
That's right, unless it's a gay pope, and then it's pink smoke.
Oh man,
I didn't say that out loud, did I?
You said that out loud.
Yeah. So, but it is. This has happened several times. It's always quite the dramatic thing because everybody's sitting on the outside. The only thing they're seeing is a chimney, and they're just waiting for it, and it could be days.
Yeah.
Before they come to an agreement on something. So yeah.
Well, so that's the process that is unfolding now in Rome in the Sistine Chapel, and whether it was you or Tim who said it, what happens in the Sistine Chapel stays in the Sistine Chapel. But that's technically now that vow of secrecy. Is that like forever? They always keep it to themselves. Or is it just while they're in the process?
Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever. Yeah, like who came in second. I don't know that that's something that they'll figure out. But by the time they choose the pope, the big secret is out, which is here's the pope.
Yeah. Right.
And it's interesting. We talk about Michelangelo. Times Square has a new statue.
Times Square in New York City.
In New York City has a new statue, and it's by sculptor Thomas J. Price. And he describes it as a fictionalized character constructed from images, observations, and open calls spanning between Los Angeles and London. The young woman depicted in Grounded in the Stars is a black woman, portly, I guess is the best way to say it. And this is what they said. In her description, one recognizes the shared humanity, yet the contrapposito pose of her body, I guess that's an artistic term, and the ease of her stance is a subtle nod towards Michelangelo's David. And I challenge you, if you're looking it up, to find anything that looks like David here.
All right, show me the picture because I'm trying to look it up. That does not look at all like David.
It kind of doesn't. It can be kind of hard to figure out where they got that, but.
Well, listen, they can do and say whatever they want, but that doesn't look anything like the statue of David. Anyway, so that's speaking of Michelangelo's David.
That's what they referenced. It's a woke. They're okay. This is what they say about
because some people are saying this promotes Marxism.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. How is that?
Well, okay, so they've torn down every statue that has any meaning historically, and now they put up a generic black woman, which checks the intersectional boxes. I don't know, maybe she's a generic gay black woman. She's a statue, so it wouldn't really matter. You could label it.
And she's not skinny like a model, so they would say this is a more realistic picture of a normal person.
That's what they say. It's called Grounded in the Stars, and it confronts the preconceived notions of identity and representation, according to the website.
Okay. I'm just going to be honest. Unless the creator of the statue said something that he or she is dedicating this to Marxism, I'm not sure how a black woman promotes Marxism.
I think and this is I haven't
I'm
seen.
not getting it.
I have not seen that in the official description, Marxism, but this is how they're getting to this. If you take down a statue of George Washington, and you put up a statue of a nondescript black woman, what you have done is you have cut the legs out from history, and you've redefined now what we're supposed to be reverencing. And that's kind of got a Marxist tinge to it. When you
okay, I'm going to take. By the way, folks, Tim Wildman had to step out, so it's just Steve and I. I'm going to take the Tim position on this and say I'm not seeing it, and I don't necessarily agree with it. And this is a story from Not the Bee, so this is not a joke that they're making. But I will say this: it doesn't look anything like Michelangelo's David.
No,
and that's the one that's people famously, it's the unclothed statue where he looks like he's looking off to the side.
It is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Is that no? That wasn't the one. What was the one that Michelangelo struck on the knee with a hammer to crack the knee, just so people would not believe it's real? No, it's not. It's a statue, not a real person.
Oh, I don't know. I've never heard that. There's
David.
also the, I guess, the Pieta. I think that's how you pronounce it.
That's one with Mary child.
Mary holding the crucified
child.
Her
Oh,
son,
yeah.
So anyway, okay. So next story.
So much for our art history today.
You can tell we're not exactly experts, but
yeah. All right.
You can check out the statue in New York. It's you can look up the image and you'll find it.
I want to have issue a little bit of a warning to parents. A couple warnings. This what we're talking about here is for parents. If you have little ones, it might not be the best time for them to be around. You might want to set them up in the TV and
parental advisory.
Yeah, just so there is a new online grooming thing going on. It's called the 764 online network, and they're targeting children. And they go and they befriend and what they call grooming, which means they set them up to trust them, and then they coerce them into doing a lot of stuff. Now, you've heard of this before, where they can coerce them into sending sexual pictures of themselves. This is just the beginning of this particular evil group. They do have them escalate this into naked pictures and other violent pornography, but they also coerce them into doing violence. The more violent, the better. It's kind of a competition among the people who are behind this to see what you can get your kid to do. The more violent, the more...
Once they've been hooked. And convinced that if they don't do what they're told, they'll be exposed.
They push their victims in... Well, and they're brainwashed, because they arrested a teenager in a town in Connecticut who she was used by these people to recruit others, and she boasted about being part of this network. This is what ABC News writes. It says they push the victims to create pornographic images, harm family pets, cut themselves with sharp objects, or commit suicide.
Okay, now the reason we're mentioning this story, folks, and I'm looking at justice.gov, and it says leaders of 764 arrested and charged for operating global child exploitation enterprise. Arrests mark significant takedown within violent online network. The reason we're covering this story, it's not for gratuitous reasons, is you have parents, you have got to monitor and be aware of what your child is doing online, and somehow make it clear to your child that if they are in some sort of trouble, that they can come to you as parents. Because what these demonic individuals do, who are running online exploitation groups, allegedly like the leaders of 764, is they use secrecy and shame to trap young people so that they can be manipulated.
I'm going to send this picture you sent me to your parents or to everybody in the school, and all of a sudden they'll do anything.
Some kids take their own lives because they can't bear the shame of it.
But in this case, that's one of the intended purposes, is to get them that ashamed. How widespread is it? According to ABC News, the FBI has more than 250 investigations currently underway. Every single one of the 55 field offices of the FBI across the country are handling at least one 764-related case.
And that is in this country.
In this country.
And who knows where.
It's a global, yeah.
So, 10 years ago, when people are talking about the conspiracy theories, about global rings doing this and that, I thought, really, is that? It sounds like a conspiracy theory. But more and more, we are having uncovered the activities of people who are clearly being used by the devil to harm young people. It's not just young people, but we're talking about young people now. And a lot of these young people are under siege with, access to pornography that they're not even looking for. It just pops up on social media. Folks, pray for your young people. Stay involved in their lives and stay vigilant.
I don't know if you talk about demonic. I don't know have you talked about the Impact Series thing we're doing with this gentleman named Jamie Sanchez?
We've not mentioned.
So this
do we have enough time to do that?
I just briefly the broad strokes.
Let's make sure we cover this in a little more detail tomorrow.
We will. But basically, he owns a coffee shop in
Denver?
In the Denver area, and he's an outspoken Christian, has Christian beliefs on sexuality and everything, and has become a target, much like Jack Phillips was. But this one's coordinated. It's a coordination between Satanists and atheists,
communists,
and they're literally putting out flyers that they've doxed this guy, and they say, bring the demonic presence to this guy's shop.
And the reason they use those words is because now American Family Studios produced what's called an Impact Series video on Jamie Sanchez. He started this coffee shop, folks, to take profits and use it in Jamie's ministry to help the homeless. This isn't a guy just with a simple coffee shop, all right? So in one of his interviews, he told American Family Studios that when we'd start preparations for the business day, I wouldn't even have to look out. This is what happened prior to what we're talking about now. I wouldn't even have to look outside. I could feel the demonic presence when these people showed up to protest us because we're Christian.
It's a real thing.
And so
we battle not against flesh and blood, but
these individuals, the Communist Party and Satanists and the local atheist group and the local LGBTQ group, they found out about the video, watched it, and hit on that statement about the demonic presence. And so we have now been sent a flyer that they have put out, and they braggingly say, let's get that demonic presence outside their store again and try to shut them down.
You can watch the video that we produced at stream.afa.net. If you're a Great Commission partner, you have access to it.
It's called the Jamie Sanchez story, I think.
In the Impact Series.
Impact Series. And we may talk about this more maybe tomorrow, get a little more detail on this. But, folks, the spiritual war is real. Please pray for Jamie Sanchez and his family and his co-workers, because the devil is out headhunting today.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today's Issues Today. More great programming directly ahead. God willing, we'll see you tomorrow.
And my father